I'm Phil Tuttle, and I want to welcome you to the newest resource from Walk Thru the Bible that we call HomeTeam, When Families Win Together. I have a special vision for this particular series that we're going to be looking at 4 different sessions. You know, so many times parents and their kids, whether those are elementary school kids or toddlers, or especially when you get older kids like 16, 18 years old, a lot of times there's an adversarial relationship. Kids think the mom or the dad are the enemy, and there's so much conflict in the home. Our vision for this particular series is to get everybody on the same page. Even the logo for this course shows individuals coming together, forming a whole that's greater than the sum of its parts. That's our vision for this new resource that we call HomeTeam. See, the goal is that you have one family and one goal, and that they come together, and that's why we called it HomeTeam. We had a hard time starting our family. It took a number of years, a struggle through infertility, thousands of prayers of people. My wife had to have 3 different surgeries, and finally we find out she's pregnant. And for me, I was just like, put a check in that box, mission accomplished. My wife is going to be happy again, and we're going on. Little did I know that the moment of birth was not the end of things. It was just the beginning. And some of you, especially ladies who are listening, you're going, well, duh, no kidding. But some of you guys, you get that. It's like mission accomplished. And my wife was pretty well prepared for parenting. She grew up with 3 brothers, and so she grew up tough, and she grew up babysitting, and she just had this built-in nurturing instinct. I didn't have that. I was also, I was one of 3 kids, but I was the youngest, and they were a lot older. I never babysat. I had never thought about changing a diaper. I know when Emily was born and the doctor goes, do you want to cut the cord? I mean, I used to be pre-med. I'm like, of course I want to cut the cord. And I take the scissors, and nobody told me it's like gristle. I kind of sawed my way through there. And then, you know, after they cleaned Emily up, they go, Dad, and they start to hand her to me. And I was going to palm her by the head. I have learned that you take things you used to be good at and you apply old skills to new things. I'm like, I can hold that child. And the nurse bends my arm away, my elbow's never bent before, and this brand new baby lands in my arm. And I know they say kids don't focus till, weeks after birth, but I'm telling you, our daughter was and is gifted. And I know she looked at me, and her look told everything. She's like, you don't have a clue what you're doing, do you? And she was absolutely correct about that. That set me on a desperate search in the Bible. I said, I'm going to read everything in the Bible I can about parenting. And there's a lot of great passages in Scripture that help us know what to do as moms or dads. There's great instruction for kids and how we ought to interact with our parents. But one passage more than any other has been for us the one that we return to. It forms for us really a compass of the north, south, east, west, so that we can always tell where we are, how we're doing as a family. And that passage is what this series is built on. It's in Luke chapter 15, and it's sometimes called the story of the prodigal son, but I don't like that title because that makes it sound like you go to this when there's a crisis. You go to this when the wheels have fallen off in terms of a relationship between a mom or a dad and a son or a daughter. Actually, this is a way more proactive. This passage teaches us a lot of principles, and they don't just even apply to parenting. They work in the office. They work in leadership at church or wherever else you have influence. Luke 15 has 3 lost things that get found. And it's really showing Jesus' heart. He was getting a lot of criticism for hanging out with the wrong people. You're with tax collectors and sinners. You don't seem like you're very holy for a traveling rabbi. And so he tells 3 parables in Luke 15. He first tells about the lost sheep. He talks about a shepherd that had 100 sheep, and he counts them one night and comes up with 99. You can imagine he'd recount them. I must have missed one. Realizes no, one of them is lost, and he leaves the 99 safely in the pen and goes and searches for that one missing one. That's how much God loves finding lost things. Then he tells a story about a woman who has 10 coins. And she has these 10 silver coins, and she counts them one time, and she only gets 9. And she's like, where'd the other coin go? She turns the house upside down, and like in the first story, when the 100th sheep came home, there's joy. When she finds the 10th silver coin, it's party time in her house. Then we get to this story, and it's about the lost son. And there's no question that the main teaching of Jesus here is that he and his Father, they love lost things, especially lost people. And Jesus will do whatever it takes to find lost things and help them come home. But there's a second set of lessons that are also in this passage. If the Father in the story represents God, then what the Father does, it's wise parenting. It's loving parenting. And so we can learn from the example of the Father in this story, and that's exactly what we're going to learn together, is learn not just from the brother, the one brother that we always talk about, and the other brother who gets mentioned at the end, but especially the loving Father. And we'll see what it can be for us when a family has one goal and they work together, one family, one goal, and they come together, and together it's a co-mission that they're sharing. What is it that we're hoping will be produced by our families? This is one of the places we go off track, because lots of times we feel like we have different goals in a family. Kids are like, I can't wait to grow up. I want to be an adult. I want to get out of here. I want to be free from all of this control. And we think that our parents are holding us back, and they're trying to keep us young where they can manage every detail of our lives. Most times that's really not accurate. The truth of the matter is that in a healthy home situation, you have one family with one goal. And so it really is this idea of home team, because the parents and kids and teenagers, young adults, actually share the same goal most times. That is that we in our home produce the next generation of adults who are mature, who are responsible, who are loving, who are secure. And that really represents for us the 4 movements of this story. There's 4 different scenes in this story about the lost son in Luke chapter 15, and we'll cover one of those in each of our 4 sessions. The first is brought to us in just the first 2 verses of this story. Starting in Luke 15, just verses 11 and 12, it says this: Jesus continued, he's just talked about the lost sheep and the lost coin. Jesus continued, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. That's all we get. We don't get a lot of detail. We don't get a lot of background. But it's pretty obvious from just those 2 verses that a lot of things are broken in this home. Back in Bible times, just like now, when do you receive your inheritance? You receive it after your father, after your mother, after they die. This son, things are so bad, he says, I cannot wait until you die, Dad. Give me my inheritance now, and I am out of here. You'll never have to think about me again, and even better, I won't ever have to think about you again. And the surprise in this story is that the father says, okay. I'm not recommending that as a normal thing. If you're 12-year-old, if you say to your mom or your dad, hey, I don't know how much you're worth, but there's 4 of us, I'd like my 4th now, and I'm out of here. I think any wise parent would go, that would be a no. But, eventually it comes to that point, and this father goes, okay. The dominant lesson from this, and this is what this whole session is built on, is this simple point. The Father allowed His Son to make choices. The Father allowed His Son to make choices. And this is a big choice that the Father says, if that's what you want to do, then okay, go ahead and do it. The Father allowed His Son to make choices. And I'm going to put a hand sign just with each of these. In this one, we're going to say this: the Father allowed His Son to make choices. It's as if He sets before him 2 paths. It's a fork in the road. You can choose this or you can choose this. You can choose to go, or you can choose to stay. But son, I'm letting you make that choice. There's choices all through the Bible. That's a big part of what we're going to see in this session. But even just hearing that, in every mom or dad's heart, there's a struggle when this is involved, because each of us as parents, and kids, you may not understand this about your mom or your dad. Someday you definitely will. But in the heart of every parent is a struggle, because we are tempted to control your lives as kids because we can save you from pain. We can prevent you from doing some of the dumb things that we did from when we were your age. And so everything in us wants to go based on the wisdom that I have now that you don't have. I know you want to do that, but I'm not going to let you do that because of this. That's well-meaning, but eventually, mom, eventually, dad, that will get us into trouble, because life is all about decision-making. On the average day, how many decisions does the average adult have to make? And we know that the world has even changed since when I grew up. I was a teenager in the 1970s, and everybody thought it was the worst time ever. You know what? The choices that I had to make as a high school student or a college student in the 70s and early 80s, those choices now are part of the daily lives of kids in middle school or late elementary school. So it's never been more important than it is now to teach kids to make good choices. And kids are going, that sounds great to me, just let me do what I want to do. Well, we'll learn some more things about choices, but the warning here is to us as moms and dads that without choices, oftentimes kids will grow up to be immature. They don't know how to function in an adult world because they've never been allowed the freedom to make choices. Several principles that we discover along the way in this one. First of all, choices are part of God's plan. I mean, this is all the way back in the beginning of Scripture, the very first few chapters in the book of Genesis. You know, God could have created people so that we will automatically follow Him. We're programmed to always obey Him. But God created people for a relationship, and so He entrusted to us the freedom of choice. And that meant that Adam and Eve, they could rebel against God. They could disobey Him. They could break God's heart. And yet that's how God believed that true love would be expressed. You don't have true love if you don't have freedom of choice. Later on in the book of Deuteronomy, Moses is talking, and that's really where we get this hand sign. He says to the people, I'm setting before you two paths, the path of obedience and the path of disobedience. The path of obedience, it's going to lead to some really great things. It doesn't mean your life's always easy or you never struggle, but there's blessing that comes from obedience. If you disobey, if you rebel against me, that's going to make your life so much harder. So choices have always been part of God's plan. It's also true that choices have consequences. They have a result. This is so important. We're going to spend our whole next session talking about that, so I'm not going to spend any time on that one now. But the fact that God designed the world with choices, a big part of it, and then also that He's built the world where choices have consequences. We'll develop that more later. You see, choices, when it comes to your family and mine, choices are a great way of measuring. Choices reveal how much kids have learned. They're kind of the pop quizzes of life. When we allow our kids to make choices and we see which way they go, we learn a lot, not just about their heart condition and whether there's anger there or whether there's a willingness to go along, but we also learn how much have they grown, how fast are they maturing, where do I need to do some extra teaching. We used to, every time we would go on family vacation, we would always give each of the kids, Emily and Philip, a little bit of money. And a lot of times, especially when they got to be in kind of late elementary school, we would give them $10. The exact amount is not important, but for us, that was enough. They could buy some little decent memory on that trip. I am fully convinced that Emily who's now 32, owns her own business. She's quite an entrepreneur. I'm convinced she still has the first $10 bill we ever gave her. And we'd constantly be encouraging, Emily, why don't you buy something? You want to remember this trip. And she's like, well, I haven't made up a final decision yet. No such struggle with Philip. With Philip, I remember one time we went out to Colorado and we're in the mountains, and Philip loved deer. He couldn't say the word deer then, he pronounced it Dio. I like Dio. And first he wanted to use his $10 to buy a Dio mount to hang on his wall. He was too young to hunt, though now he loves that. But we go to the first tacky gift shop in Rocky Mountain National Park, and he sees this snow globe. You know what those are? It's a little plastic thing, and you shake it up and snow floats down, and there's a deer standing in there. And it was just under $10, total ripoff, and he had to have that. And you try to go, you know what, Philip, this is the first day. We're going to be on vacation 6 days out here. I bet you'll see something you want to. No, I want a deal. I love deal. And so we let him buy the deer. I cannot tell you how many things during the next 6 days he saw that he's like, I hate that stupid deal. You do that 3 times and now I'm bored with it. And it's sitting in the back window of the rental car. And he's like, can't we go back and exchange it? Can't you give me another $10? And Ellen's looking at me like, come on, loosen up. You know, he's such a sweet kid. I'm going, no, this is how he's going to learn. Some of you are going, man, I'm glad my father isn't a jerk like you. But we didn't give in. You know, you fast forward it, and it took a long time because he didn't learn it all in that one trip. But now our son, he's a Chick-fil-A operator. He's got almost 100 people full-time and part-time working for him. It's a big business. And though math is still not his favorite thing, that's not his main aptitude, he gets finances. And he understands you can spend your money any way you want, but you can only spend it once. And he learned that by those little choices along the way. You know, choices, though, they have to be tailored to the child's age and personality. I mean, I wouldn't say, you know, here's all this traffic on the street, and your 5-year-old goes, I want to walk across the street. I go, well, Phil said on that series we should allow our sons or daughters to make choices. That's stupid. That's neglect as a parent. No, you don't allow that choice. I'm 9 years old. I wonder what would happen if I took this match and lit it and held my hand over it. You'd pull their hand away. Philip's 29 now. If he wanted to try it, I'd probably say, go for it, you know, and I'll be there with the cold water to help you out. But it's got to be determined by kids' personality. It was easier when we were parenting. We had one computer in our home, and it was in the public space. We never let kids have computers in their rooms. You look at now, smartphones, which seem to be everywhere. You realize the choices that are being given when you give a child a phone? What age is the right age to do that? I don't know the answer to that, but you better figure that out. How much access do you give to the World Wide Web through the phone? Because the truth is, you don't have to be looking for trouble. Trouble will find you on this phone. So what's the appropriate age for that? That's a great conversation to have. This is especially important if you're talking about a family where there's been a separation or divorce, that even though you're not living together as mom and dad anymore, that there's conversations about this. You're always going to co-parent. And if one is extremely strict and as one is lenient, and that is used as a battlefield for which one is the kid going to love more, then there's big trouble coming down the road. Choices need to be determined by age, but also by personality. By personality. With Emily, as I mentioned, I mean, to encourage her to take more risks, to have a lot of fun. I mean, we had a party when she got her first B in school. It didn't even happen until college. I can't imagine being that big of a perfectionist. But we had a party. Emily got a B, yes, and God still loves her and he's still on the throne. We were not having discussions like that related to Philip. With Philip, the issues were different. It's like, slow down. Think about things before you do them. The choices were very different, yet we love them both equally, but that doesn't mean we treat them identically. The vision that grows out of this first session is this: if we allow our children to make choices, intentionally build this into our parenting, they're a lot more likely to grow up to be mature. You'll see it happening sooner as they move into the teenage years. The teenage years don't have to be something to be dreaded. We're partners in this progress. We're partners in the process of leading our kids toward independence, toward becoming mature, responsible, loving, and secure. Dear Abby, in our country, it used to be people would write to her in the newspaper. I don't know if that's still going or not. If so, it's probably not the original Dear Abby. But one time she wrote this. I think it's so smart. She said, if you want children to keep their feet on the ground, put some responsibility on their shoulders. That's what choices do. We're going to end each of these sessions with a family huddle, with some huddle time. And I'll give you something to discuss together as a family. And I can't see your family. I don't know what age kids are there. You may even be by yourself watching this as a parent now of adult children. Believe me, your job is not finished just because they've gotten married or gone off into the workforce or even moved far away. You may be a grandparent. This is relevant for you too. But especially if you're there together with kids and parents, with teenagers there. Here's the topic for tonight during huddle time. It's this: Mom or Dad, I want you to tell them a story, maybe a couple of stories when you were growing up about when you had to make a choice. Please resist the temptation to make yourself the hero in every story. You know, the stories they'll remember and learn from the most and probably laugh their guts out about is when you made really dumb choices. They need to know that you're not perfect, but share a choice that you made, but also talk about what was your parents, their grandparents, what was their view of choices? Did they give you a lot of room to decide? Did they restrict you more? Did they try to control everything? Those are the questions, because remember, the struggle here is we want to pick our kids' friends, we want to pick their school, we want to pick what they wear, we want to determine what they watch on TV, and though that may be appropriate early on, gradually needs to be a gradual release, because someday they're not going to be under your control. How did your mom and dad, how did your kids' grandparents handle that? And then kids, this is your chance. Lots of times we only talk about this topic in an argument, when we're upset, when we're wanting to push mom or dad away. This is the time to do it, when things are good. To have a conversation with your parents and answer this question: I wish you would give me greater freedom in this area. Mom, Dad, I wish you would let me make my own choices about this. And parents, don't think that this lesson says you automatically go, okay, fine. You're 9 years old, you want half of the inheritance? Go for it. I'll buy you a plane ticket. Obviously, choices have to be patterned. They have to be designed for the age, the personality, the maturity level of each child. But listen to what your kids share. And probably there'll need to be some negotiation. Lots of times the answer isn't no, but it's not a straight up yes either. It's a yes if there can be some progress here. Have that conversation. Kids, this is your chance. Teenagers, this is great. If you feel that you have earned some more privileges, some more freedom, this is your chance to express that. Mom or Dad, really listen. Listen to their heart in this and see how you can come together as one family, one goal, home team. I can't wait to hear what God does during this part. I would love it if you would just email me and first just tell me you're watching, who you are, who's watching, what ages and where. But also, if God does something during this huddle time, I'd love to hear about it. And I'm going to be praying for you and your family right now as you have this first huddle time together. So go for it. It's great to have this first session together, but we're really just getting started. I would invite you to join me here tomorrow night, this same time, 7 p.m., Facebook Live, on YouTube. It will also live on after that on YouTube. But we're going to take a look at this. Some of your parents are very nervous right now, and you're going, this doesn't sound very balanced. That's the great thing about God and His Word. He always balances out what He says. And in the next part of the story, session 2, we're going to look at the consequences.